Hello, I'm Patricia, a 32-year-old woman whose early years were marked by the profound loss of my mother. This tragedy deepened the bond I shared with my father, who devoted himself to meeting my every need. This significant loss made me cautious about opening my heart, and for a long time, I thought I might remain single. Then I met Peter, a caring and persistent gentleman who is now 34. We were introduced by a friend who was worried about my prolonged singlehood. After a year of gentle courtship, Peter proposed. Now, as we prepare for our upcoming wedding, I can't shake the memory of a distressing incident that marred our reception. Under the influence and oblivious to the crowd's murmurs, my in-laws confronted me publicly, demanding that I contribute an additional $55,000 monthly, half my salary, as a show of financial worth. They insisted it was too late for objection since I was marrying into their family. I was stunned by their audacity, especially at what should have been a celebratory occasion. My face drained of color, and just as I began to collect myself, my father intervened. He took the microphone from them and sternly reprimanded my in-laws, reminding them of the embarrassment they were causing. This episode not only shocked me but reinforced the cautious approach I've always taken in relationships. Despite the love and support from my father and Peter, navigating these family dynamics has been a new challenge. From the moment Peter and I started dating, his kindness and attention brought me true happiness. He became such an integral part of my life that envisioning a future together felt natural. When he proposed, it was clear we were on the same path. Peter always knew the right words to ease my doubts. "Don't worry if you're uncertain about something. I'll be here for you until you feel better. I love you, Patricia. You can always rely on me," he would say. His promises and presence provided a warmth that only deepened my affection for him. When I shared the news of our engagement with my dad, his joy overflowed, and he even shed a few tears. "Wow, Patricia, you're finally tying the knot. I'm over the moon for you," he exclaimed. We shared a light-hearted moment as I playfully teased him for being so dramatic, a sight I rarely saw. "I used to worry you might never settle down," he admitted, his concern surprising me but showing just how deeply he cared. His heartfelt congratulations meant everything, especially knowing the sacrifices he made raising me alone. As Peter and I dove into wedding planning, our lives became a whirlwind of activity. Our jobs filled our weekdays while weekends were dedicated to organizing our big day, leaving us with little free time. Eventually, we found a day to visit Peter's parents for the first time since our engagement. Despite our hectic schedules, we were eager for this visit. When we arrived at his parents' house, nerves fluttered in my stomach. Peter noticed and reassured me with a comforting smile. "Don't worry, my parents are really kind." His words eased my anxiety slightly. As I rang the doorbell, Peter's mother greeted us. "Mom, I'm home," Peter announced cheerfully. "Welcome home." "Peter, it's so nice of you to come," she said warmly, her eyes lighting up at his presence. I followed with a polite introduction. "Nice to meet you. I'm Patricia, Peter's fiancée." However, her initial warmth seemed to cool slightly as she turned to me. The smile she offered was polite but lacked the affection she had shown her son, and her gaze felt scrutinizing. This subtle shift left me feeling uneasy as we stepped inside. Peter's mother led us into the living room, her reserved demeanor persisting. With a tone that felt more interrogative than conversational, she began, "Patricia, I'm curious about what you bring to the table. Peter is our treasure, our only child. If you're going to marry him, you must be suitable. Are you worthy of him?" Her directness caught me off guard. I hadn't expected such a frosty reception from my future mother-in-law and struggled to find a response. "Remember, you'll be joining our family. Are you prepared for that?" she continued. While marrying Peter would indeed mean becoming part of his family, her high expectations felt unreasonable. After all, Peter's family wasn't a prominent dynasty, and I wouldn't even be living with them. The pressure of her questions weighed on me, and as I hesitated to reply, she grew impatient. "When I ask you a question, answer promptly. You're being rude," she snapped, her voice rising. "I want to know if you're ready for this." Feeling overwhelmed, I managed to respond, "I hope Peter and I will support each other in our marriage." Her reaction was dismissive. "That's such a naive thing to say. Your job as a wife is to support Peter. You clearly don't understand the basics." Just then, Peter's father, who had been sitting nearby, intervened. "Honey, please calm down." He turned to me with an apologetic smile. "I'm sorry, Patricia. I hope you weren't too upset by my wife's words." "It's okay," I replied, trying to stay composed. I understood that Peter's mother was protective of her son and might have spoken hastily. At that moment, Peter's brother entered the room, and his gentle tone provided a brief reprieve. But then he added, "What my wife said does have some truth to it. What concerns me is that you come from a single-parent family." Confused and a bit hurt, I asked, "What do you mean by that?" "Well, being raised by just one parent doesn't exactly have a good public image. We can't be thrilled about someone from such a background becoming our son's wife, can we?" he elaborated, the weight of his words hanging heavily in the air. I couldn't hold back any longer. "Wait a minute. What's wrong with being raised by a single parent? My father worked incredibly hard to raise me alone. I'm grateful for my upbringing and proud of him. Growing up with one parent doesn't diminish my worth." The room fell into a tense silence as I stood my ground, feeling the weight of their judgments yet resolute in my values. It was clear that Peter's parents held an old-fashioned perspective, questioning my ability to be a good wife based solely on my upbringing. They expressed doubts about whether I had learned essential skills like managing household chores. "I helped my father with household chores, and I can cook pretty well," I replied with conviction. "So please don't make assumptions about me." Despite my clear explanation, they seemed to dismiss my words and laid down conditions for our marriage. "We'll allow you to marry Peter, but in return, you must promise to prioritize us since we are his parents. Can you promise us that?" I was taken aback by their request. It felt more like a transaction than a blessing. Later that evening, feeling sidelined by their dominating attitude, I decided to share my concerns with Peter. "Hey Peter, do your parents always talk to people like that?" I asked, hoping for some understanding. Peter seemed unfazed. "What's wrong with how they talk?" I was surprised that he didn't recognize the issue. "I mean the way they spoke to me and what they said," I explained. Peter shrugged it off casually. "Oh, they were just discussing whether you're ready for marriage. I understand they're concerned." But their comments felt a bit over the line. I persisted. Peter's nonchalance surprised me. "Really, what do you think they said that was wrong? They gave us their blessing, so let's not dwell on it." I agree outwardly, but inside, I couldn't shake the unease that Peter seemed to align more with his parents than with me. It was deeply troubling. Sensing my discomfort, Peter pulled me into a hug. "Patricia, you don't have to worry so much. My parents are just a bit upset because their only son is getting married," he explained. Though his words were meant to comfort me, they didn't fully alleviate my feelings of being misunderstood and somewhat alone in this new family dynamic. I found myself wondering how we would navigate our future together with such differing expectations from Peter's parents. He tried to ease my concerns, suggesting that they simply wanted what was best for us. "They just want us to have a strong marriage like theirs, and that's why they might come off a bit harsh," he explained. I attempted to see things from his perspective, acknowledging that perhaps their high expectations came from a place of care. Still, I couldn't shake the discomfort stemming from their criticisms of my upbringing. I believed our marriage should center on us and our mutual respect, not solely on seeking their approval. As I grappled with these thoughts, our wedding day arrived, filled with profound emotion. Walking down the aisle with my father, who had raised me alone, was a moment I would cherish forever. As Peter and I exchanged vows and rings to the sound of applause, I felt overwhelming joy, realizing the significance of the commitment we were making. The lively atmosphere at the reception, filled with congratulations from friends and colleagues, made for a truly memorable day. Despite my initial misgivings about Peter's parents, the happiness of the occasion reinforced my belief in our decision to go through with our plans. However, as we prepared to greet our guests, I noticed that Peter's parents were visibly intoxicated, their behavior becoming slightly erratic, which made me uneasy. An uncomfortable moment unfolded when Peter's mother, a bit too forcefully, pulled me aside and said in a commanding tone, "Patricia, listen to me. After this wedding, you are going to dedicate yourself entirely to us. Get ready because we will test you rigorously." Some guests chuckled, mistaking it for a joke, but I felt the tension in the air. Shortly after, Peter's father took the microphone, glanced at me, and remarked, "Patricia, aren't you ashamed to wear a dress like that? It doesn't suit you at all." His tone was sharp, and Peter's mother added, "Dear, you should tell her the truth." The mood among the guests shifted, whispers growing louder, some in disbelief, others in discomfort. I turned to Peter, hoping for his support and expecting him to address his parents' rude remarks. To my dismay, he remained silent, later stating that he couldn't do anything about it and didn't believe his parents were in the wrong. This response was disheartening. making me realize the challenges we might face as a couple, especially regarding his parents' influence and our differing perspectives on handling family conflicts. As we moved through the day, I knew this issue would require more discussion and understanding if we were to build a strong, unified future together. In the bustling atmosphere of the wedding hall, a harsh reality struck me. Peter would not shield me from his parents' harshness in the future. The situation escalated quickly when my in-laws, under the influence, unabashedly continued to berate me with unreasonable demands. "Well, you're married now, but to truly be part of this family, you need to prove you have enough money," they announced, adding that after we registered our marriage, I should give them several $1,000s each month, along with my entire bonus. Their words left me stunned. Such audacious demands at our wedding reception were the last thing I expected. My face drained of color as I stood there. My father stepped in, his voice firm yet respectful as he took the microphone from them. "Enough of this. Don't you realize how inappropriate this is?" he challenged. Peter's parents shot back defiantly. "Why are you interrupting us while we're talking?" Their sneers cut deep. I felt my temper rising in response to their cruel words about my father, but he remained composed. "You're even worse than I thought. Refusing to meet me just because I'm a single father is shameful. I never expected such bigotry from people associated with a respected figure." The mention of President Donald seemed to startle my father-in-law. "How do you know President Donald?" he asked, his tone shifting to one of concern. "He's a business partner of my company and, more importantly, an old friend of mine," my father clarified. He added, "And speaking of single parents, President Donald himself was raised by his mother alone, so your comments have inadvertently insulted the president of the company you work for." As realization dawned on their faces, the gravity of their blunder became apparent. My father-in-law's demeanor shifted dramatically from assertive to pleading as he dropped to his knees. "I apologize, sir. Please don't mention this to the president," he begged, his earlier bravado evaporating in the face of potential consequences. This sudden change marked a turning point in the evening, highlighting not only the thoughtlessness of their earlier remarks but also the respect my father commanded. As the night continued, I contemplated the complex dynamics of our newly extended family and the role I would choose to navigate within it. Amid the unfolding drama, my father-in-law looked utterly defeated, and guests reacted with a mix of laughter and disbelief, some capturing the moment on their phones. My dad, standing firm in his principles, replied, "Apologies can't undo what's been said." He then approached me, quietly asking if I wanted to leave with him. I nodded, taking the microphone from Peter's hand. "Thank you all for the entertainment, but there will be no wedding. I will ensure that all gifts and contributions for this occasion are returned," I announced resolutely to Peter, his parents, and the guests at the reception. With those final words, I exited the hall alongside my father. As we left, I caught a glimpse of Peter and his parents, their faces a mix of dismay while relatives quickly gathered around them, concern etched on their expressions. The repercussions of that night were immediate. As I returned the gifts and explained the situation, many guests expressed their sympathy and commended my father and me for taking a stand against such unacceptable behavior. They appreciated our integrity in refusing to be manipulated by offensive demands. The incident left a lasting mark not just on our lives but on Peter's professional reputation as well. Colleagues who attended the wedding began to view him differently, tarnishing his standing due to his failure to defend me against his parents' unreasonable actions. The embarrassment became overwhelming for Peter, ultimately leading him to resign from his position. Additionally, the president of the company where my father-in-law worked caught wind of the fiasco, and the fallout was severe. Peter's father was demoted and transferred to a less prestigious role in a remote countryside office. Socially, Peter's family faced repercussions too, becoming somewhat ostracized by relatives due to the scandal. It was a regrettable series of events, but sometimes the consequences of one's actions are unavoidable. In the aftermath, I focused on rebuilding and strengthening my relationship with my dad. We spent more quality time together, finding solace and support in each other's company. Navigating such turbulent waters deepened my appreciation for everything he had done for me. One day, he invited me for a heart-to-heart conversation that took an unexpected turn. "Patricia, have you ever considered taking over the business?" he asked, hope and earnestness in his expression. Caught off guard, I hesitated. "Are you suggesting I trailed off, unsure of where he was leading. He smiled slightly. "Why don't you work towards becoming the president of my company?" It was a significant proposal, and from his tone, It was clear he believed I was ready for the challenge. "I'll do my best, I promise," excitement and nervousness swirling within me. After reflecting on my recent experiences, I decided to focus on advancing my career at my dad's company, setting aside romantic pursuits for now. I aimed to prove to both myself and my father that I could excel and perhaps even become a great leader like him. Currently, I am fully committed to learning all aspects of the business. The work is demanding but immensely rewarding, and I'm eager to embrace every opportunity that comes my way. The ordeal at the wedding underscored just how unreasonable Peter's parents had been, turning what should have been a beautiful celebration into a spectacle. Fortunately, since the marriage was never legally finalized, I avoided a potentially disastrous entanglement. Now free from marital commitments and in-law complications, I can concentrate solely on my professional ambitions. It's liberating to have found such clarity after a tumultuous period. I'm optimistic about the future and excited about the prospect of leading the company one day. Thank you for following my story to its conclusion. If you found something meaningful in it, please consider subscribing. I look forward to sharing more updates and insights with you in the future.